I've been watching movies and TV and stuff. I watched Drive Away Dolls. It's a Coen Brothers movie. Actually, it's from one of the Coen brothers and Tricia Cook, his wife. But really, I feel like this is more of a Tricia Cook movie, and Ethan just tagged along, get the movie off the ground more with his prestige name, you know. This one's reminiscent of like the early Coen Brothers stuff, like Raising Arizona, Fargo. This one you could say is a lesbian road trip film. Ethan Coen and Tricia Cook have a non-traditional relationship. Tricia Cook identifies as queer, and they have, separate partners. It's good to see non-traditional marriages out there in the spotlight. You can really tell that, there's a strong lesbian voice in this movie. It's unapologetically lesbian, and that's probably its strongest suit. But unfortunately, it didn't really gel with me, the overall narrative. It has some good performances from Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan. They're a pretty good duo, Geraldine's more of like the introvert type, while Margaret is the more charismatic, charming extrovert. Very sexy, a lot of like dildo jokes, which didn't always land. This is what I wrote for my Letterboxd review. I was sure the opening sequence was going to turn out to be a movie within the movie. A parody of the Coen Brothers style, presented up front, then immediately subverted. Instead, Drive Away Dolls continues as a shabby caper with a rhythm I couldn't keep up with. On the other hand, Tricia Cook delivers an unapologetic lesbian road romp for a breezy matinee. Put aside that it simplifies queer politics into Democrats versus Republicans, and maybe Margaret Qualley channeling Shane from The L Word via Texas is enough to make your day. Margaret Qualley's her character is a bit of an acquired taste, but I actually enjoyed it. I thought she did a good job. I think she fit in with the wacky world this movie set in. Her dynamic with Geraldine's character here is what kept me most interested in seeing where the movie went. Even if some of the jokes didn't land, or if the tonal shifts, the wackiness was just a little too much sometimes, it does feel like there could have been more to it. There could have been more depth between their budding romance. It revels in a liberating feeling of just being queer without a care in the world, and it's fun to hang out with these characters. If you're missing some lesbian culture in your road trip movies, then this is definitely the movie to check out. It also kind of feels like a surface level peek at lesbian culture and particularly queer politics as well, because particularly in this scene, it kind of just groups these characters as like Democrats while the big bad's Republican, which in general is true in the sense that it's Republicans who are always passing those anti-LGBT laws and such. But even back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Democrats as well were against gay marriage. It's almost like it was made by neoliberals who are like, oh, like what the Democrats offer is enough, and as queer folk we should be content with them or something. Like, of course it's not explicitly about that, but it has that like feeling to it. Maybe I'm not giving Tricia enough credit. In one interview, Tricia said like she's involved in activism these days, not so much in the party scene. And I think she even mentioned that like one of her friends was like radical anarchist. And maybe they could have leaned into that more, and it would have made the story a little more interesting, be influenced more by her activist friends. But maybe they wanted it to be more palatable to distribute this film more easily. The film does feature some scenes with cops. That was a little bit awkward. That Margaret's character kind of explains to Geraldine's character here how one should handle themselves with cops. There was some interesting little dialogue there, but felt like a little bit like white-splaining in a way. And maybe we should have given Geraldine a little more bite. And then again, one of their friends is just a cop, and he's portrayed as just like as more of a goofball. And the film overall just doesn't seem like it's self-aware in regards to relationship between cops and queer folk. And the other day, it's just like a simple, fun road trip movie. If you don't take it, too seriously, then it could be a good time. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like it had a lot more potential. Apparently, Trisha and Ethan are gonna doing more movies together, so maybe we'll get a 4-star film next time. In my opinion. Now, the other thing I watched was Lisa Frankenstein. This is the latest Diablo Cody film, written by her at least. It's directed by Zelda Williams, and a newcomer. And this was pretty fun. Like, there's definitely some rough patches throughout the movie. It definitely felt like a first-time filmmaker. Like the pacing, it's supposed to be like a comedy, horror comedy, but I think the pacing was off a little bit with the jokes. Like, it felt like it needed to be edited a little bit tighter. But visually, aesthetically, it's like kind of like an homage to an 80s teen comedy, right? And I think, Catherine Rooney here does a decent job as the character. She's like an awkward teen character, goth character, I guess, 80s new wave goth, I guess. But some of the cringe and awkward scenes that maybe felt a little flat sometimes. At the same time, it kind of felt a little somewhat realistic sometimes, like, because sometimes people, teens can be that awkward and weird sometimes. There was something endearing about her character. I wasn't really fully engaged with it. I do want to watch it again. I feel like this could be one of those cult movies that you could put on just to like hang out with your friends and just laugh with it and have a good time. I do appreciate the swings this movie takes. It's a film for the goth girlies. Definitely reminiscent of like something like Tim Burton would do back in the 80s and 90s. And it gets pretty violent too, and it goes there. It definitely it doesn't shy away from some of the horror elements. At some points it could feel a little bit incongruent. The tonal shifts sometimes don't really land, but overall, I would say I would recommend it for if you're into this type of thing. I gave it a 3.5, because I felt like it was just missing some polish. Maybe I'll give it a better look in the future and re-rate it. Lastly, I've been watching Shogun, the historical drama miniseries. About a time in Japanese history where they started to open themselves up to the outside world. We got a British dude who crash lands onto the island, gets imprisoned. There's like civil wars going on. There's different families trying to grasp at power, different factions. It gets bloody. There's about 4 episodes released so far. We're nearing the halfway point. It's a 10-episode long series. It's been compared to Game of Thrones, but without all the fantasy elements, and of course based in historical Japan. It's based on a book, but it was also a show from the 80s, so I imagine it's the updated version of the story. But it is a bit concerning that it does seem like it may be a bit of that white savior narrative. We got particularly in this latest show, we got the British guy who like is kind of like teaching some of the soldiers how to use cannons and such. We'll see where it goes. The production value definitely is up there with Game of Thrones. It's definitely well lit, well acted, well directed, well shot. It's nice to look at. Looks like a lot of it's shot on location. Like Game of Thrones, you're like curious to see like, oh, who's gonna come out on top? Which faction is gonna get an upper hand? There's like potential betrayal coming along. There's a little bit of sexiness here and there. There's a central romance, of course, with the translator. Translates the words of the British guy, the translator here. It's cool that it's like half Japanese. They like subtitle it, so we've come to a point now where it seems like studios and networks are okay with like having foreign languages be a big part of a show or a movie, and audiences are much more accepting now. Although it's a little bit odd though that supposedly a lot of these characters are talking in Portuguese, because that's like the whole thing, that like the Portuguese found Japan first. And so when some of these characters are talking English, they're actually talking Portuguese. But I guess they didn't want to like add a third language to confuse folk, I guess. It's kind of understandable, but you know, it's well paced and well structured. It definitely like reminiscent of Game of Thrones again. Like this latest episode ended in like a little bit of a twist of violence at the end. Hopefully, it'll overcome the inherent white savior narrative. To look at it cynically, it is a bit fortunate that a show about a Japanese drama like this to be made here in the U.S. requires having a lead British guy, white dude, to act as like the audience surrogate, as opposed to like maybe have a Japanese production, take the reins here. Maybe not have the British guy be a central character. But it does look like we're in a better place now compared to the 80s when the original Shogun came out. So hopefully by the end of the season, it'll prove itself to be, well worth it. But yeah, I'll probably check back on this, closer to the end and give my feedback, perhaps even when the finale shows up in a few weeks. And we do have some nice sexy times, I kind of discovered that I guess like FX is on FX is okay with some nudity now. I remember back in the nip and tuck days, they would show like sex scenes and butts and stuff, but female presenting nipples would always be obscured. But it seems that we've come to a point now where the basic cable is trying to compete with HBO, I guess. And it's like, well, I guess we're just gonna show some nips now. That's fine. I think it's tastefully done, well done. There's like a concubine character that I feel like maybe could use a little bit more screen time, in which she's not just being sexy like. Maybe we'll have more of that coming up. Another thing I want to bring up though is the commercial breaks. Now this is airing on FX, of course, so there's going to be some commercials, and you can also watch it on Hulu. And with the ad-free tier, you can watch it without ads, but it's made to be intercut with ads. So there's going to be a lot of moments like this that just black out to put in an ad there, right? And especially the first couple episodes, it felt a little bit jarring for me. Like it felt like there was too many interruptions. It just kind of disrupted the flow of it a little bit. But I guess I kind of got used to it, and then later on, I think there's less breaks in later episodes. It may look like an HBO show, but it is a bit more segmented in that way. And it's something I feel like we're probably going to see more of coming up, even on HBO, maybe even all these new streaming sites, because they're adding ad tiers. They found out the Netflix, Disney, all these folks, they found out that hey, like having an ad tier actually gives them more money, provides them with more of that moolah. So I feel like there's going to be more prestige series coming up that are going to be edited and designed a certain way and structured in a way to have ads included. I don't know, just something to be conscious of, I guess. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. Maybe I'll watch some more stuff, and then I'll chat about it another time. I think that's going to be very likely. Bye.